Five Nights at Freddy's is a series I'm sure most people are familiar with by now. What started out as a slice of mystery grew to a confusing and investigation-focused beast it is today, and for good reasons. While attending Chuck E. Cheese's as a kid, I was always creeped out by the mechanical band I saw on stage. On top of that, I also have a few memorable nightmares from my early years that I still don't know how to explain. But they bode well with the creepiness instilled in this game, especially with the bedroom scenario in Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Since the game's first inception, I have followed along eagerly watching my favorite YouTubers tackle the challenges, and jumping in alongside the community to figure out the lore. This was before I started taking YouTube seriously again, and I loved every minute of it. There was something epic about the thrill of the hunt, and how the whole online community came together to unravel the dark story hidden behind riddles. And with the release of Sister Location, things only got more interesting. Naturally, I was drawn to the story and how it seemed more dark than any other Five Nights at Freddy's game I had witnessed. But before diving into that, just know that there are going to be lots of spoilers in this video, so if you have yet to play the game, I suggest giving it a whirl. Still here? Awesome. Five Nights at Freddy's Sister Location is a very twisted scenario, but that level of twisted will grow and shrink depending on what is actually going on. You assume the role of a man who is responding to the need of a nighttime technician. Unlike the other games where you mainly sit behind a desk, this time you actually move throughout the facility taking on various tasks. Majority of your time is spent servicing animatronics, while the other half is of course surviving. However, something interesting is that your character willingly comes back every night to partake in more chaotic events. And this is strange. Now I know in all the other Five Nights at Freddy's this is true too, but your situation really never changed in them. You sat at a desk, closed doors, threw on a mask, or made noises to guarantee your safety. However, as the person taking on these roles, it's possible that they never knew they're in danger. Canonically, you don't die in any of the first 3 games as a security guard, so to these guards, the fear may not have been as real. It's unsure if that is the reason why the security guards stayed around or if it were for other reasons. But Sister Location is a bit different. You were confronted right away with images of a condemned facility on day 1. A teaser image on Scott's website had a hidden explanation that said that Circus Baby's Pizza World was closed due to reported gas leaks, or perhaps due to shady activity at night. This looks to be an excerpt from either a newspaper or online publication of some kind that covers local news. It is interesting to note that a local entrepreneur financed the venture, however. All of this is why it's super odd. If a place was publicly known to be closed, and is clearly condemned on the inside, how does a person take up a job there? How does one even apply when there is no known point of contact? Clearly, a place that is closed wouldn't be taking applicants. And on top of that, there's a high chance you would hear about it on the news before anything, which would keep you from applying. But what if you didn't actually apply? What if you're there for another purpose? Your character has no quarrels with doing any task that is asked of him by his hand unit, whose voice directs you during your duties. But then again, the hand unit, despite being a responsive form of artificial intelligence, could only be acting on a set of predetermined parameters. It assumes the person who showed up is the last person it was programmed to be expecting, before the facility was condemned, and carries out its role as is. Your character fulfills this role worry-free, and is sort of immune to the happenings around him. Now, obviously you control the character, but even the character in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 breathed nervously. To me, it felt like the character in this Sister Location has seen some stuff in his day, and is desensitized, and thus carries a poker face about its tasks. But what is going on here? Throughout the game, you are teased with audio clips that hint at your character looking for someone, who we assume is your daughter. But again, in the context of a normal person, if their daughter was missing, and they suspected this place, they'd probably get the police there as soon as possible, especially if their daughter disappeared after a birthday party. Based on some scenes within the game, and due to some hints before the game came out, it appears this place does rent out animatronics, as some technicians drop one of them off on the 4th night and can be heard talking about it. But if you were a concerned parent who applied for this job, and you encountered anything this strange in this facility, you'd surely seek out the authorities right away. You wouldn't come back 5 nights in a row unguarded if your child was at stake, unless there was something else going on in your mind. Something I found interesting about this Sister Location is that it mimics the Milgram experiment to some degree. The Milgram experiment was a series of psychological experiments that tested people's obedience to authority figures. It was designed to see how people would react when told to do inhumane things that they weren't normally comfortable with. An authority figure would instruct a questioner to do a series of tests that involve shocking an individual in another room, if the person in the other room answered incorrectly. The voltage continuously increased with each shock, and the person being questioned would eventually scream, refuse to answer, and ultimately fall silent. However, this authority figure pressured the one asking the questions to keep pushing forward regardless of how the person answering the questions pleaded. While this experiment was actually fake and no one was getting hurt, the person asking the questions would continue to do so due to the influence of the authority figure. They would press on regardless of what their heart was telling them. In reality, it was a test on this person who was asking the questions, and how they would react to delivering such cruel punishment. I bring this up because the sister location has your character go through a similar scenario. Not only are you instructed to shock these animatronics, but you are constantly told what to do either by your hand unit or by Circus Baby. You follow authority throughout the whole game, and it is only when you resist authority do you escape your long-awaited death. Again, a normal person would have the opportunity to opt out after the first night and not come back. But as Baby states in the second night, I'm curious as to what events would lead a person to want to spend their nights in a place like this willingly. And that takes me back to this person's purpose and their comfort with this environment. It seems like this isn't their first rodeo. So, what if this character we play as is actually Afton himself? We are introduced to Afton in the beginning of the game through a series of dialogue exchanges, but he is also mentioned in the novel. Afton is whom we often refer to as the Purple Guy, the one who kidnaps and kills children. Alongside Afton is Henry, whom was the original creator for the animatronics. They were business partners for the pizzeria, whereas Afton handled all the business aspects of the operation, or at least that is what is assumed. If we do play as Afton, and Henry did commit suicide as hinted at in Five Nights at Freddy's World and the novel, there's a high chance we are also that same local entrepreneur who financed this extension to the Fazbear Empire. If that was the case, then that would also mean that Afton's daughter was killed. But that would make sense since he knew the dangers of his own animatronics. He never let his daughter see them because he knew they were dangerous. And while they were killing other children, he did not want his own to die. With that said though, he should have very well known that his daughter would be dead not long after the incident and prior to going down into the condemned facility. But then there's the element of spirits as well. Through these series of murders, and the animatronics taking on life of their own, perhaps he was aware he was meddling in things outside of a normal human's control. By trade, he was a serial killer himself, so he was already off the deep end in terms of his morals. However, if he was aware there was a chance that her spirit would be preserved, that would be enough for him to seek her out. That was his motivation for diving into the hellhole he created, and lurking within its walls. However, this puts a new twist on things though. If his expectation was that she was preserved as a ghost, could Five Nights at Freddy's really be about bending the rules of the universe? What started out as serial killings could have changed once awareness was gained that the human spirits still lurked inside the animatronics. This torturous environment and gruesome deaths to children could have been a catalyst for their spirits lurking around after death. It is often said that spirits don't pass on unless all their issues are resolved in this world. Could these murders and their high-stress setups be planned specifically so that spirits would always linger? Obviously, that sounds a bit far-fetched. But this whole scenario looks like it is under heavy surveillance to make sure everything goes according to plan. Making these children's lives unbearable and living in constant fear might have been the reason for making them linger as a spirit. At the end of Sister Location, if you seek out the hidden room, you are given some really interesting visuals. For starters, after entering 1983 onto the keypad, 3 cameras click on that reveal the house from Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Which is odd because, why are there cameras in this house? Something super strange is the fact that the doll from the 4th game can be found in here too, and is holding a walkie-talkie. Now obviously this could have just been placed there, but due to the juxtaposition of the doll and the cameras, it is apparent that this dialogue we see in Five Nights at Freddy's 4's cutscenes was done by someone through a walkie-talkie as a way to shape this child's experience. Other people have also indicated online that the breaker room layout holds the Five Nights at Freddy's 4 locations, such as the minigames layouts to the actual bedroom in the game. Due to the difference in the opacity of these areas, it is determined that these are on the surface while Sister Location takes place right underneath them underground. But what is the goal of all this? This might be going out on a limb, but what if the goal was to harvest the spirits of children? Sound crazy? Maybe, but let me explain. We know that the purple guy was keen on murdering children, but upon discovering their lingering spirits, did he gain a second motivation? Knowing that these animatronics could now serve as killing machines, Did he pitch the idea to investors so that they could be mass-produced or built at a higher quality, while he simply admitted the reasons why they were built a certain way? The other voices at the start of the game questioned him on these things, but he seems to only be interested in describing what the animatronic was practically built for, instead of its intended use. They were pitched as kid-friendly machines, but in reality, were tools of torture. So what started out as a killing rampage grew to something beyond the scope of what was believed in the world. But at the same time, is also what drew this murderer into his own lab to ultimately seek out the spirit of his daughter, whom was actually killed by his own practice. The ultimate goal was the realization that these machines could gain sentient life by being infused with the spirits of children. It's a bit of a stretch, but at the same time, everything in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe is built upon assumptions. The boundaries of the story remain fluid at all times, so it can be hard to rule things out. At the same time though, as Afton is a killer who enjoys the act of killing, wouldn't automating the process remove the thrill factor and the enjoyment for him? It is a pretty twisted look on things, but from the eyes of a killer, it is something to think about. There's still the question as to who else was involved in this, who was watching the child in Five Nights at Freddy's 4 through the cameras, and more so, who is watching all the cameras in the lab. It makes you wonder if there was really a gas leak too, if that specific gas did anything to humans, and overall why there is a focus on collecting and killing children. And then there's the factor that the two technicians were hung in the lab when their own bodies could have also been used as hosts for the animatronics to escape. Why is only your character viable? And is this lab directly below the current pizza shop like the map hints at, or is it elsewhere? There has to be an additional location if it was closed before opening, as in Circus Baby's Pizza World, unless it took over the old pizzeria building. But I'm going to stop myself there as I could spit out these thoughts forever. There's just so many questions to be answered, and I feel even with this analysis in this video, we are only just scratching the surface of the lore behind Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. Who knows? Something could come out next week that could completely change everything we know. But now that I've dumped it on all of you, I'd of course love to hear your thoughts. Because everything in this video is conforming logic, there's plenty of room for error or misinterpretation. However, that's where you come in. What do you think is really going on in this sister location? Do you think you play as a regular person, or perhaps a more key character like William Afton? And last, do you think the animatronics have ill intent, or are simply acting out their own respective justice to escape this torturous environment? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You can also shoot me a tweet too if that tickles your fancy. And with that, thanks for tuning in to this unforgettable haunted experience. If you'd like to join me on my YouTube voyage and learn the hidden lore behind the Five Nights at Freddy's universe, then the subscribe button is just what you're looking for. Thanks for watching, guys and gals, and until my next video, cheers. You've made it to the end of the video, but wait, your quest isn't over yet. Five Nights at Freddy's was a series I've always followed closely. I love the lore behind the game, but I more so love the concept behind how it tells its story. There is a power in silence and by not explaining things. I recently put out a video on this concept and how it applies to other games, so I definitely recommend giving it a gander. Or perhaps you'd like to check out my video on the Game Theorists analysis of Sans from Undertale versus my own. Both halves are presented in an unbiased fashion to really dive into the root of the topic, so I think you may find it interesting. As always, there's a slew of other videos on my channel too, so regardless, I hope you enjoy.